Welcome to the Musicians Weekly, volume 27. Today in the center is a kind of discussion between, I would call them the fifth favorizers and the third favorizers. So what is the basic principle, how we modulate and how we experience modulation? Is it more fifth generated or third generated? Because many people, even Carl Dahlhaus was in some doubt about this. And many people think because we have these very interesting third relationships in the music, for example, by Franz Schubert or by Johannes Brahms, and with a lot of raffinesse, that going through the thirds, I mean, we first of all, we have the tonic of C major, which has its relative as the tonic of E minor. So we always have the related minor key to the major key. That's the first thing that gives us something very close with the third, which is not explained via the fifth relation. So maybe I go back to the psychology of intervals first of all. So when we have the overtone series, we first have the octave, which is the same, and then we have the fifth. And the span from the fifth to the octave is the fourth, which is not there, apparently. It's just included. But the fifth and the fourth, which are the first intervals apart from the octave, are the intervals of clarity, of stability, of clear relation, and of a kind of neutral emotion. That means not that they are really neutral, but they are not so much associated with real feelings. But of course, fifth is absolutely related to openness. So the fifth upward is the pure expression of extroversion, going away from the basic tone outward into the world. And the fourth is coming back. Or if you then create a fourth on the direct way against a basic tone, it's even going down like the fifth downward, going inside, introversion. The next interval that comes is the major third, but it comes together with, not obvious, the major sixth, which is the interval between the fifth and the major third. And then we have inside this next octave also the minor third is only the interval between the major third and the fifth, and the minor sixth, which is the interval between the major third and the octave. So the only obviously appearing interval in the overtone series is the major third. But both thirds and both sixths are included. And this is the octave where all the real emotional field and all the warmth and all the particularly touching affections are appearing in music. It's the field of the third and the sixth. And there is also these more indirect things happening. So the major third is already there, but in the circle of fifths as an extrovert interval, it appears only as number 4. There is first of all the fifth, then the major second, then the major sixth, and then the major third, and then the major seventh. So it comes late, but it is very close because of the overtone series. It's already there. So things are mixed up. When you play the major sixth, you will, if you are totally unconditioned, you will experience it as an extrovert interval. But if there is some kind of allusions, you may experience it in an introvert way, as a parallel, as a minor parallel interval. So it's a field not anymore as clear and as decisive as the fifth and fourth. And then comes next octave in the overtone series, the major second, and of course, from the major second to the octave, the minor seventh. And this is again, in a way, very closely clarity and more dissonant clarity, but closely psychologically closely related to fifth and fourth. And of course, it is the next interval coming. If you go fifths upward, the second fifth is the major second. If you go fifths downward, you come to the minor second as the second step after the fourth. When you go this upward, so if you go downward fifth wise, but you melodically upward, you have fourth and then minor seventh. So this is very interesting. This has again this kind of a bit more neutral, but very obvious direction, extrovert or introvert. And then come the very dissonant intervals of minor second and major seventh, which are obviously the intervals that really create conflict. And the next one is then, in our 12-tone system, the tritone, which is somewhere between like no direction inside, no clarity at all, and in this way related again, obviously, to the thirds and sixths. And of course, two minor thirds are building also the tritone interval. That's very interesting. It's then not the tritone in the original sense, 3 notes, it's 4 notes. But anyhow, the result as an interval is the same for us. It's at the turning point, the most outward post of harmony, where it can be reached in both directions, extrovert or introvert. It's not clear. But now we come back, if we have this general psychology of the intervals, we come back to the question, what gives us really direction and a clear sense of relation? And with the fifth, it is very simple. If we follow the circle of fifths, we go until the outpost. That means from C to F sharp, or from C to G flat, which is the same as F sharp. So we have a clear direction in both ways. Extrovert direction, introvert direction. With the third, it's something totally different. First of all, there are 2 kinds of thirds. If we follow the minor third, we will come around in 3 steps. And we will have, what do we have? No, we will not come around in 3 steps, in 4 steps. And we have the diminished 7th chord, which has no direction at all in itself. It goes immediately into the region of the tritone and then it's a closed circle in a very small space. So that means we would have to alternate between major and minor 7th. Of course, that can work. But then if we alternate between major and minor 3rd, if we alternate between major and minor 3rd, we will arrive at the 5th immediately. So we have the orientation clear again. If you go with a major 3rd only, we go out into the enharmonic world immediately in the 2nd step, which is very interesting. We immediately lose connection. We have an augmented 5th as a 2nd step. Major 3rd, augmented 5th. We're outside somewhere. It's a so-called augmented triad we reach. So we lose contact immediately. This, if we divide this into equidistant steps, we come to the whole tone scale, which is the direct way into atonality. There is no more direct way into atonality. We go to the tritone, and then we cross the 5th and go directly to the augmented 5th, and we are outside of this direct relation. Of course, this is included, for example, in the so-called harmonic minor scale, but there it is not coming from the root note, it is coming from the 3rd from the minor 3rd to the major 7th. There we have this. But then we have a 5th included in relation to the basic note. So this is just something that happens. And of course, then we can understand also the augmented triad in the music of Liszt when it really appeared constantly and in later music. but it is not built on itself as a basic. It is included in the scale. That's something different. So following the third, we will be outside of, if you go with the major third, we are end of with the whole tone, which is the same, only faster. We are immediately out of relation, of directly experienceable relation. If we go with the minor third, we are in the chromatic washing machine immediately. But of course, where can we go? It is not possible to go on. So we can only have the mixture of different kinds of thirds. Then it will work, but then we have immediately fifths. And the idea that it could be third created, the whole thing, of course, came from major minor tonality when we were going to build up these chords, and also in jazz then. So we have the chord, let's say the dominant seventh, and then with a ninth also above. And so this kind of sedimentation of thirds. And when you come from that, and you take this as the normal kind of harmony now, succession of seventh and ninth chords and so on, you can get into some kind of idea that all the thing might be third created. If you then take also into account that we have these third relationships in the music of Schubert and of Brahms and so on. But this is not the basics. This is, we can say, these are two very different fields. The one is very clearly oriented, which is included in the first two fifths we go away. The fifth and the major second, or the fourth and the minor seventh, which is fifth down and major second downward. Anyhow, then we come to the field of thirds. And this is not so clear in orientation, but very, very effective, very emotional world in itself. And then we come to these outposts of minor second and major seventh, which is shrill dissonance, which is really the thing that leaves us in conflict. And then we come to the tritone. So we understand that with the fifth circle, it is totally clear. But there is no circle of thirds that is working in that way. It's only a secondary phenomenon. But of course, it is what touches us in such an irrational way. Much more irrational than the fifth and the fourth. And much more mysterious, of course. And so we can understand that if we go toward the irrational and the mysterious, we are very fascinated by thirds and sixths and by all this world of chords built on sedimentations of thirds. So this is, and in jazz music, and of course also in classical music, it doesn't matter. You can leave the basic note away and then you start just with the minor seventh chord, but then you build some other thirds on it. You can build anything on it. Also seconds, which in a way also create kind of thirds. But then you don't avoid, if you don't just take the pure major third or minor third chords, which are very limited in material, in expression, if you mix them, you have immediately fifth included. So you have the orientation, always, immediately. But you only have the orientation if the fifth comes in. If there is no fifth, it basically stays atonal in the sense that nothing is the center. And you will not have a clear orientation to go from here to there. And we have very interesting things concerning the whole tone scale, where the way Debussy handled the whole tone scale is very interesting. He would, for example, in Epigraphantique, he would just take kind of longer way with whole tone, but at some point, and not very long, he adds something fifth related. Before that, it's not fifth related, it's like where to go, searching around. in the first fifth gives it a clear direction. You can experience that if you just take some of these pieces. So I hope this is helpful and can give some orientation. Thanks for listening. All the best.